back to the Dealist, your insider's guide to navigating the complex world of M&A. My name is Catherine Ford, and in this episode, we're going to explore how corporate development teams are using AI. I was joined by Alessandro Cozzi of Korn Ferry and Ronjohn Dadd of Intralinks. Join me now for the conversation I had with them. Alessandro and Ronjohn, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of The Dealist. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you guys talking about AI and how AI is being used in corporate development. But before we jump straight in, let me ask you both for a little bit of background about your career and how you've ended up in the position that you currently are. Alessandro, could I maybe ask you first?
Absolutely, and it's a pleasure to actually be here. So I started in the Big Four, so in the pure audit, and then moved to transaction services for then doing Corp Dev for 10 plus years. I've done Corp Dev in my country, as you can tell by my accent. I am from Italy, and then to move from Italy to Belgium, where I joined an engineering tech company, head of Corp Dev there, acquiring companies across the globe, I would say, for then moving here first to Dallas, Texas in US, for a big company that we bought, and then to a Fintech company in Lehigh, Utah. And finally here in Korn Ferry, where I do now help companies on thinking about how to bring in AI and how our consultants can actually help them in thinking all those things and bringing it in, not only on corp dev team size, but also inside the finance and accounting teams.
Super, thank you very much. Ronjohn, can I ask you for a few words of introduction about yourself and how you fit into the picture?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me, Catherine. I am on the product team at SS&C Intralinks. I'm a director of product here, focused on our DealCentre AI platform, which is helping deal makers on the corporate side as well as our advisors and private equity, and helping make their due diligence and deal making experience better, faster, more efficient. How I got here over the past few years, I've always been in the tech space. Prior to being in S&C, I was at LinkedIn, and prior to that was at a Fintech company called Funding Circle for a number of years. And prior to joining Intralinks, I was actually always on the customer-facing side of the world and sales, and so my role, joining on the product side within S&C has always been focused around bringing that customer perspective into the build of our products going forward. So that's kind of where I've been and how I've gotten here today.
Now, both of you work really, really closely with corporate development teams. And I'd like to start by setting the scene and asking you, how do you see the role of the corporate development officer varying between different companies and between different industries? I mean, there's obviously a difference if you're a very large company and you've got a large corporate development team behind you, or you've got a smaller company where that's not necessarily the case. Can you share a little bit more insight in sort of the variations that you see across the different companies that you've worked with, Alessandro?
Sure. So I would say that the corp dev team and where are they focused, it changed based on what you mentioned. So on size, on sectors, but not only on size on sectors, but also on the life of the company. So where are they at right now? And speaking about sectors, if you think like, I'm just taking three big sectors here. So like tech. Tech sector, generally speaking, the corp dev team, it is really focused just on acquiring new tech and how to actually scale really fast. While if you are going to go into some more mature sectors like the manufacturing or then the healthcare, they will tend to think about the corp dev on how they can really streamline their processes or how they could acquire some similar companies to them so that their offering it is going to be bigger. Or they will actually start thinking, well, where could I go in terms of state or in terms of countries? While then the third one, it is more on the startup world. And startup are really different. Startup, they might think more of, shall I buy, shall I build it, or shall I just partner? So it is really different. And the corp dev team, it is going to be structured in different ways. and their focus, it is going to be extremely different based on where they are, again, sector-wise, size-wise, but not only that, but also where they are in their life of their company, especially like if you're in a startup world.
That makes perfect sense. Ronjohn, can I bring you into this conversation? Based on the conversations that you're having with your clients, is that something that you're seeing as well? Or what kind of variations have you been able to identify when it comes to that corporate development function?
Yeah, I would say that is very much the case, and I would, probably bucket them in the same exact areas that Alessandro had mentioned. You have the, core corporate development teams about, scaling, acquiring, and then, the startup world that's a little bit more bootstrapped and also, focus on moving very quickly. And I think I also, from a product lens, where we see maybe a little bit differences within these different types, is your smaller organizations with corporate development teams. They're looking for solutions and the tools that they're trying to scale themselves. They're trying to turn themselves into 3-4 individuals, whereas a much larger organization that is very used to acquiring and adding on businesses, they're actually looking for more, workflow related tools, and how can I make the other people within my organization quicker at the parts of, the deal making process that they're going to be a part of. So I think it's the various degrees of where tools are, being used and looked at based on those three different segments, where it's, how do I scale myself because I'm a one person, corporate development team, versus I've got 50 to 100 individuals that are going to be looking at a potential deal that we're going to make. How can I make them more efficient at their job, and how can I make my workflows even simpler? I see it very similarly.
And we're going to come back to this question of technology and how technology is being used. But before we do that, I want to ask Alessandro, you sort of raised this issue of like how acquisitive is a company? Where in its life cycle is it? Now, in terms of if you've got a company that's extremely acquisitive, do you feel that the functions within the priorities within the corporate development shift, how does the structure, how does the day-to-day operations change when you do lots of deals as opposed to when you're doing maybe just a once-in-a-lifetime transaction? Can you give us some insight around that, please?
Yeah, sure. And it is very different. And let me tell you just a back story. So my first Corp Dev role was in an automotive and spare parts dealer. So it's a very old business, so that we didn't know where to look and what to actually do. And then we got acquired by quite a large corporation based in Chicago, always in the same space. And we used to make an average of 5 deals per month. So we were really making a ton of deals. How we could actually do those deals, it is really having a structure that it was really mindset for doing so many deals. And we were just looking at the financials. And we used to have just one tool that we actually use it to spit out what were our 3 or 4 KPIs. And based on those, we would just go and then acquire those companies. And so that's how we could be extremely quickly. We could just see which are the KPIs that we wanted because we knew how to drive those, and so that we would acquire them. While if you're in a company where you may do just 1 or 2 deals per year, maybe, you are more really focused on 2 major things. One is on the strategic side. So why am I really bringing those companies and how can they help them out in the long run? And then second is how can I bring those in without disrupting all my company? So it is really a different type of how to do deals and how to think about deals. One, it is more on a strategic side, and the other one it's more on a transactional side of things.
5 deals in a month. That's just absolutely crazy. How many people were you in your corporate development team? I mean, that's just to get through that amount of data that's associated with that number of transactions. Your head must have been spinning quite a lot, no?
So I can tell you that we were not a big team. So we were a company of roughly 12 billion at that time, and whole corp dev team worldwide was just 15 people. So I can tell you that we were staying late at night. It was long. It was actually long to actually do so many deals in such a short time frame.
Yeah, I'm very, very impressed. That is really something. But I also think what you said about there just being 15 people, because I think for many of us who don't work in M&A, I report about M&A, but I don't obviously work in M&A. And in my head, these corporate development teams are huge, but 15, I think, is a respectable number. There's lots of teams that are even smaller than that. Now, I want to move on and start spending some time talking about technology and specifically talking about AI, because obviously season 2 of the Dealist is all about how AI is being used in an M&A process. Alessandro and Ronjohn, can either of you think of any examples that will illustrate to our listeners of where AI has been used to really make a tangible difference or change the efficiency of a transaction when it's been used in an M&A deal? Alessandro, maybe I can come to you first and then Ronjohn bring you into the conversation afterwards.
Sure, definitely. So let me break down for a second the flow of the full transaction. So you will always start first with the strategy. So why are we going out and looking for companies? Which are the companies that could make sense? Which is our rationale that could fit or could be a nice fit with our company? And then you will go into the scouting phase. Then you will go into the evaluation phase, then the due diligence, closing, and post-closing. Why I am actually saying this? It's because where you're spending the most amount of time is during the scouting period and during the due diligence period. So where I've seen using AI in the smartest way so far, it is during the scouting and the due diligence, especially during the scouting phase where you're thinking, well, now that I do have my strategy, how can I make sure that I'm covering all the companies that are out there that could make sense? And when I do have the full coverage, then I will start rating those. And I will start rating those for then bringing to the board which are the ones that make sense. Well, guess what? So many times you are going to be in front of that board and they will go like, well, what if we will change one thing? And you start crunching numbers at the speed of light, but you can't come up with an answer there. And you always have to come back after days. Well, now with the AI, you can actually have a tremendous amount of data that it is going to be pulled in. And so that you will be sure that you do cover the whole spectrum of all companies out there, you can make sure that you do have a structured way to actually tier them up. And so that which are the ones that really make sense. And more often, when you will be in the front of the board and they will ask you something or they will need to tweak something, you can do it on the spot and you can answer them there. So it's where you can bring efficiency during the very first phase, but not only, you can bring also quality, because the deals that you will bring on are really the ones that make sense for all the company. Same thing in the due diligence phase, where the amount of data, it is so big. Well, you can streamline all that if you're using AI on top of those. Think about all the Q&A question that you could have an answer just looking at all the data that is in the data room. It is massive. It is not just speed, but it is also quality. And at the end of the day, the ROI that you are bringing is if you are bringing good companies in the right moment with the right people.
Do you think we're going to see more M&A transactions as a result?
That's a great question, actually. And let's think about why you wouldn't do any deal. It is because you feel that it is risky. It's because you don't know if it is going to add value to your company or not. And you don't know if your rationales, they're the right ones, yes or no. So if now we will take that one and then bring it back to, well, if we use AI, we can have more data points. We can actually have less risk because with more data points, we can answer to questions better. So in a nutshell, I do believe what you just mentioned, that we will see more. And we will see more not only from large companies out there, but also from the small ones that can have, it is kind of having an army of analysts at your service that can surface everything that could make sense for your company.
So I think AI is, not only allowing you to go out and do more, but also be smarter and more strategic about those individual acquisitions you're making so that they're much more likely to be successful later down the road or don't take multiple years to actually fully integrate after that acquisition has been made.
So that sounds as if you're saying that actually it's not just the deal sourcing, it's not just the due diligence, but it's actually also the post-merger integration where AI can really increase the chances of success for a company. So to make sure that actually those synergies that you were predicting are realized once the deal has been completed. Is that right, Ronjohn?
Absolutely. And it's, the activities that have to take place for that post-merger integration, but post-merger integration becomes easier when you've done a much better job of due diligence, a deeper dive into all the details of the organization for all the things you need to do within that post-merger organization, which AI in that due diligence phase helps surface a lot of that information that may have been missed or overlooked, or the reason of timing, needing to get things done quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break, and after the break, we're going to come back and spend some time talking about how the use of AI in corporate development is evolving as we go along.
Intralinks DealCentre AI. Take the pain out of deal making with intelligent automation to power every phase. Transform your deal making with DealCentre AI. Intralinks. Go forward.
Welcome back. I promised you that we'd spend some time talking about the evolution of AI in the corporate development process. Now, earlier this year, Intralinks published a report based on an AI boot camp that we held in Silicon Valley, where senior corporate development leaders discussed real-life impact of AI on deal making. And we're going to stick a link to the report in the show notes. So have a look at that report. And one quote really stood out for me. It said, we had someone saying, the use of generative AI in corporate development teams is limited but growing. Now, this report was done a couple of months ago, or the boot camp on which the report is based was done a couple of months ago. And I'm curious from both Alessandro and Ronjohn to hear about how you feel that the adoption of AI is really shifting. This is an incredibly fast-moving technology, and it sounds very much as if something that was maybe yes, this would be a nice to have, is increasingly a must-use tool in an M&A process. Alessandro, can you share some of your experiences of working with different clients and how the adoption of AI has changed over the last couple of months?
Absolutely. So first, all the clients are asking the same thing. How can we use it? How can we have it inside our company? All of them. Then I would say that right now, they are then more in the testing phase, meaning that I'm always saying to my clients that you can have two ways of adopting the AI. That it could be or one after the other one, or it could be at the same time. But the first one is what I call the desktop version. And the second one is more on the corporate side. What I'm thinking about the desktop version is when you are using ChatGPT or when you are building up your agents. And then when you are then thinking of how I can really utilize AI inside my processes. And I've seen so many corp dev teams starting first with the desktop version. So them building some agents so that they can see how the AI can actually help them. How can they speed up the process? How can they have more quality deals? How can they streamline their post-merging? So that one, it is the first phase. But right now I'm seeing always more and more companies that are thinking now, well, now that we have seen it, now that we have seen that there is a lot of value out there, how can we break down our corp dev processes so that we can integrate AI? And the last thing is the ones that are doing the best thing is the ones that are tweaking their processes so that they can bring in AI, not the ones that are keeping their processes fixed and just trying to actually push in how the AI could work. If you tweak your processes so that the AI can be a top layer, that's where it is going to work really well, extremely well. But right now, I'm seeing that they're more on the testing side, and they will go very quickly on implementing real tools for the whole company.
Ronjohn, can I bring you into the conversation? Does that tally with your experiences with corporates wanting to use AI in the corporate development function and indeed in M&A transactions?
Absolutely. It's exactly what I've seen, especially over the past year. It went from, and very quickly, I'll say too, went from, it seems like a good idea, I'll wait to see how it all pans out in the end, to clients actually testing, trying things out. To Alessandro's point, the desktop version, I'm using ChatGPT more to help me write emails or analyze data. I think that I see that a lot, but what Alessandro was also mentioning, which is what I talk about when talking about how AI can truly be impactful to customers and clients that are utilizing AI and M&A, is actually utilizing AI in their workflows, in their current workflows that they have, whether it be tweaking their processes, like Alessandro mentioned, or having tools that make sense throughout their workflow, that it's constantly top of mind. If you think about an M&A transaction, what corporate development teams are doing, they are working tirelessly, long hours, extremely fast. If you're creating a tool that you have to stop what you're doing, go somewhere else and try to get an answer out of AI, it's less easy and less likely to adopt than actually building into every part of your workflow so it comes naturally. So I think, in summary, there is a lot of, testing, and everybody wants to utilize AI. How they fit that into their everyday workflow so it's a normal part of their operating rhythm, that's where I think the industry and a lot of our clients are trying to figure out, how do we bring those into our workflow on a regular basis.
Ronjohn, you've led me very, very nicely onto the next topic that I want to spend some time talking about, which is skills. Because obviously, if you're trying to get your workforce to use AI, you need to also equip them with the skills necessary to work in this sort of AI-enabled environment. Are you seeing something in sort of the shift of skills that that corporates are looking for when it comes to their corporate development teams? How are clients leveling up their knowledge when it comes to an understanding of AI and how to effectively use it, so you don't have to shelve what you're doing, so you're focusing on an AI specific task and do this jumping backwards and forwards, but for really to have it integrated into the workflow so you can make the most of it? Can you share some of your insights there?
Yeah, from my perspective, not being on a corporate development team, can't necessarily speak to the talent that they're looking for. But what I can say is, in adoption of AI and the skills needed, to adopt, utilize it in an effective manner, it is really the growth mindset, and we look for that in our teams internally, and then our clients and customers that are adopting these tools are also having to look for people that have that growth mindset, that adaptability to want and change and do new different things, to change their workflows, change their processes, to be able to actually utilize these things that are new. And I'd say the other skill that's vitally important when utilizing AI and getting the most out of it is being able to articulate, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve. Not, I need to do this, but what am I actually trying to get out of utilizing these AI tools? And that's what the LLMs are so great at, is coming up with the solution based on what the problem actually is. And I think getting people to think and work with AI tools by being able to properly articulate what problem and what is the core that they're trying to get at is a huge factor in being successful with AI functionality and tools.
Alessandra, a growth mindset, is that one of the skills that we're having to increasingly see in corporate development teams? Or what other sort of skills are you seeing coming to the forefront when it comes to actually using this technology in an M&A process?
Yeah, so what are we? So it is obvious that a growth mindset, it is needed. But what I'm thinking of is that if you work in a corp dev team, you should have that growth mindset. I mean, you're acquiring companies, so you should have it. But you do need some more skills, or you do need different skill set. And what we are really seeing with our clients is that they're asking for trainings in the AI and how they can better use it, because not everyone knows how to use it, and not everyone knows what is it, how does it really function, which are the things that I could ask to an AI, or which are the things that I could give to an AI to help me or to give me some superpowers. So training, it is a very important factor. We have seen that if you just adopt a tool, well, the curve is just going to be like this. If you will pair it with training to people, then the curve is way steeper. Why? Because it is how your mindset it is going to work, because you know how the tool works, so that then it can give you tremendous leverage on anything that you are actually doing. So training your people, it is really has to be part of the AI change. Otherwise, you will miss out a very big chunk. And the last thing, what we have seen so far, that always more and more for any roles that we have seen, they want someone that knows also a little bit of data science. Because now with all those large language models, so data, it's becoming the big thing. So in any role that you will cover, knowing a bit of data science, it will help you out.
Okay. Alessandra, it's as if you've preempted my final question, which was, what advice can you offer to our corporate development listeners trying to get their head around how to use AI in their work? Training is obviously the key element that you would advise. Anything else for anyone that's just listening to this and going like, oh, I understand, I'm supposed to be using it, but I don't quite know how to start or where to start with it. What would you advise them to do?
Sure. So if it's someone that has never used it or that doesn't have anything inside the company, I'm always stating start small and really be focused on something that is clear with tangible outcomes. So that's why, again, if you look at the areas where the corp dev processes and are particularly maybe time consuming and data intensive, that's where you could bring it in and see the value from day one. But always start small with a clear outcome. That's the best way to actually start anything and to start using a technology that is here to actually grow. And it is really here to actually help you out.
That's a lovely way to wrap it up. Thank you very much. Ronjohn, from your perspective, the advice to anyone wanting to learn more and embrace AI in their workflow.
I think to what Alessandro said, you have to start small. But what I always, where I've seen the most success in some of our clients is not only starting small, but where you start is a result of taking a look at your end-to-end process of the M&A lifecycle, your process within an organization. You have to take a look at that and say, where are the biggest areas of opportunity to become more efficient, to move faster and quicker? Maybe it is the scope, the scouting piece. Maybe it's simply reviewing the due diligence and the data, the vast amounts of information. When you lay all that workflow out and understand where are the biggest pain points, not only on like how often does it happen, but how much time does it take, how much efficiency can I get out of improving that helps you narrow down where to start small, so you're not trying to boil the ocean and fix everything at once. So I always say for those that have not started utilizing or bringing AI into their organization, don't go out and just start buying or trying random tools, but really take a look at your process, identify where are the gaps that you really need to focus on and want to make more efficient, and then start to test and go out and start, small with individual tools to figure out, is that going to provide me the correct ROI that I saw was needed throughout our whole process.
Super. Thank you very much. That's all for today's episode of The Dealist. I'd like to thank my guests for sharing their time and all their insights into this extremely exciting topic. If you've enjoyed this episode of The Dealist, please like, follow, subscribe, or comment. We'd really love to hear from you. That's all for today. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.